Hey, I actually just wanted to make a quick video because this is easier to show someone than to try to just explain it to them. But I just had a major breakthrough with one of my projects, and yeah, sorry how dirty my desk is, but with one of my projects, and I just really wanted to show, well, everybody. So basically, I'm going to explain what this is, but to show you the starting step, the goal is to be able to make a Nintendo controller be able to work on a computer USB. And so right now, the first step was just trying to... I didn't want to destroy the controller. I wanted to be able to keep it and utilize the actual plugs, and I'll go ahead and I'm recording this by hand here, so I won't take it apart now. I'll show you a little later. But as you can see there, what I did is I found a 4-tap controller and basically used a Dremel. That's why it looks so rough if you get up close to it. I don't know if it'll focus or not. But I Dremeled it out of the 4, so there's only the 1 tap, and just soldered my own lines onto it, because basically, in fact, you can see from this here, there's only so many pieces of information. You've got the ground, the clock, strobe, and data, and then the 5 volts. These two over here aren't used, so that's basically what we're doing here. And then, so right now it'll work with all of them. I just only have one LED hooked up to it, which is to the A button, but you'll notice if I push the A button over here, I'll try to get them in the frame together, but whenever I push the button down, the light goes off. When I let go, it turns back on. So I have it reading the controller properly. So basically what's happening here is I have, it's all on a 9-volt battery right now. It's not plugged into USB or anything. This is just kind of experiment on a breadboard. But we have a 5-volt regulator right here, basically just dropping this 9-volt battery down into a voltage that won't fry my microcontrollers and stuff. That little tiny chip right there in the middle is an ATTiny 85 microcontroller. It has 2 kilobytes of onboard, and let me go ahead and turn this off so that light's not blinding. There we go. It has 2 kilobytes of onboard memory, and it has a 20 kilohertz, or excuse me, 20 hertz clock speed. And then to the right of it is one of those, in fact, right there you can see it, an 74HC595 shift register. And basically what that allows is for us to control 8 bits of information, which, if you've ever paid attention to a controller, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 bits being able to be sent from a controller. So basically what it's doing is I wrote this, and this small of a program is what controls it, but you write this program, or excuse me, I wrote this program and then uploaded it onto this little tiny ATTiny microcontroller, and then when it has the voltage applied to it, basically what it does is it sends a signal out to the controller, and then it checks to see if one of those buttons are pushed or not, and if it is, then it returns back 1 byte into this registry. If not, then it returns back, you know, an empty byte, or 1 or 0 basically, and it just keeps repeating that, and it shifts it down the line, and it just happens millions of times a second, so it happens so quick that you don't notice the flickering of it, and that's actually because there's a whole process called latching that I won't bore you with. But so yeah, I mean, basically this is proof of concept. Though the last thing I need to do is, as you can see right here, it's kind of hard. Come on, focus. Yeah, sorry, my phone's not exactly the best thing to record this with, but as you can see on this bit shift registry, those 7 pins next to where that resistor is, those are the, you know, the other 7. Actually, there's 6 on that side, and then for whatever reason they put one of them on the opposite side. But that's where what will happen basically is if the button's being pushed, it'll be 0 volts, and if it's not being pushed, it'll be 5 volts. And each one of those represents one of the buttons from, I think it's right to left. So like A is the first one, B is the second, start is the third, etc. So I have to take that low voltage, and in fact, I wish I had it, it's upstairs, but there's a keyboard microcontroller, like something like this. Inside them, they have a small little microcontroller that when 2 leads are connected, that's what imprints, you know, an A or a B to your computer screen. So I'm going to use that to, you know, convert this, you know, analog signal into a digital signal for the computer, and hopefully be able to make it so that, you know, even though you're hitting up, down, left, right on a Nintendo controller, the computer will interpret it as, you know, up key, arrow key on the keyboard, like that, you know, that kind of like something like this. So up, oops, sorry, up would be up, and down would be down, etc. So, and then I can bind those keys to video games on my computer. So it'll allow me to, play with that little controller on my computer, which I would love, because playing on, when you're trying to play, say, Mario Land and you're using WASD, it's just not that fun, it takes some of the fun away. So, yeah, this is, and if this is all ugly and just breadboarded right now, I mutilated the crud out of that thing. So, luckily I do have 3 more that I can, what was nice that I found out is that even though I butchered it, I realized that this part here is actually modular, and once I got rid of the the circuit board that was attached to these leads, it slid out, so I didn't even really need to butcher it. So I'll just desolder the other ones and avoid all that damage there. And, yeah, you learn as you go. Right now, this one is, battery powered. That's why that 5-volt thing's there. But it eventually, when it's hooked up to a USB, we'll just draw the power from the USB itself, which is 5 volts, so I won't need that regulator. Yeah, I've been rambling, so I'm just super excited that this actually worked. I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in again and play with it. I wish I would have, installed a few more of the LEDs so we could have, seen the results from that, the different keys hitting on the different lights, but I'll do that another time. But yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and share with the world, because I'm super excited that this is coming together. I've been acquiring the parts for this project for probably, I'd say, since my last apartment. I've been there for so I'd say at least 6 months, and I've just, it took a while to get different aspects that I needed, like the controllers from old game shops. It took me forever to find the Foursquare. I had to go to old used game shop. The ATTinys had to come from Hong Kong, so did the bit shift registries, and then just, kind of farming local places to get things like the voltage regulators. In fact, I forgot, I lost my battery, so I had to pull that out of a smoke detector. Note to self, put that back in. But yeah, and then there's like the Arduino, basically, or excuse me, this is called an Arduino Duovelo Nove or some, I can't pronounce that properly, there's the name of it if you want to know. But basically, you can use these to program your little microcontrollers as opposed to, spending $40 to buy a thing that just programs those. And I can program any size. You can program these little ATTinys, or I also own a couple of these bigger ones, which are called the ATmegas 328Ps. And those are awesome. They have way more memory and like 24 outputs as opposed to the 6 that the ATmega does. But this project only needed 3, or actually 2 outputs, the clock and the latch, so that's simple. And this is a $1.49 chip. That light's blinding it again. I'm just holding down the button to get rid of it. But the shift register is, I think they were like 99 cents each or something like that. I got them off Amazon for like 10 for, actually I think it was like $5.99, so probably 50 cents a piece. And because I'm buying those voltage regulators at Radio Shack, those were like $4. Radio Shack is such a ripoff. I didn't want to bother order those from Hong Kong, and I actually did order some with that ATmega, so I'm not going to pay their prices anymore. And then just these little things over here, like the controllers, you can go to used game stores and get those for like $4 a pop. The 4-tap, I talked the guy into selling to me for $10, I think, so 14. I mean, in total here, I probably maybe have $20-30 invested. I don't know. I wasn't adding in my head as I was going there, but so yeah, it's a pretty cheap project to do. And then obviously, you have to put together some kind of housing, and eventually you can't just have it all on a breadboard. You're gonna have to solder all this together. But I have all the parts, like the sockets and everything upstairs. I wanted to test it all on a breadboard to make sure I wasn't ludicrous, and that this is my first circuitry project. I've never programmed a circuit or microcontroller or anything before, so I didn't know if it was gonna be a flop, and the second I plugged it all into the battery, it was gonna fry that microcontroller or what. So the fact that I am actually picking this up, it's pretty neat. And basically, for anyone who's interested in the code aspects of it, all you're doing basically is let me see if I can get this focused. Sorry, I'm trying to make it not shake. But basically, you have the latch pin, the clock pin, and that LED one actually shouldn't even be there anymore. That was from an old experiment, so that's just unnecessary code in there. You want to be careful with that, because there is only 2 kilobytes of space on these things, which you'd be amazed how quickly that is consumed. But then what you do is I set those 2 pins to outputs, because all that thing does is, like I said, send strobes to the controller, and the controller responds back whether a button's pushed or not. So it never receives inputs. The actual shift register, let me turn that LED off again. The shift register is what receives it. So when you push the button down, the information shifted into that, and that's what's hooked up to the output. So there was no need to have an input on the microcontroller. It never needs to know what the state of the buttons are. It just needs to, it's like kind of a coordinator. It tells both the controller and the shift register both when the clock ticks at the same time and when to latch information at the same time. That's, I know, a little bit excess information, but that's what its job is basically, is it just tells 2 things to do, 2 tasks simultaneously, and it does it in 8-bit increments. So what it'll do is it'll call latch once, and then clock 8 times, and then latch again, clock 8 times, and just repeats that process over and over. Normally this would be done, with analog, lots of different, components, but thanks to these little microcontrollers, you can do it with code. And so that's exactly what's happening here. If you look, this line basically takes the latch, turns it high-low, and then this was, again, unnecessary code, so you could pretend like that's not there, but basically that used to just turn the LED on and off to let me see each, clock, each tick. And then this one right here, basically 8 times it just goes, like I said, down the row and grabs the bit for each part. So first it grabs the state of, button A, then B, then start, then select, then up, down, left, right. And it just does that at, like, I think this, right now I don't have an external clock hooked up, which I'm surprised it's actually even running. I do think these have, like, internal, like, 16 hertz clocks or something like that, and I have an external that I thought I was going to have to hook up to it. So that means it's being checked like 16,000 or 16, I'd have to look, but several hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times a second. So that's what creates that like almost fluid, input. So that's pretty nice. So it's basically, it never knows what the whole state of the controller is at any given point. It kind of cycles through and knows the state of each button one at a time, and it's just happening so fast that you think it's instantaneous between all the buttons. But wow, this video is getting long, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a wrap here. But yeah, thanks for watching, for whoever did, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to explain the aspects of this. I'm having a lot of fun with these kind of projects lately. It's fun to take the coding aspect of things. I am a programmer by trade, so to take that and to convert it into kind of a physical project like this is a lot of fun for me. So yeah, have a great day.